What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. This time we're launching a brand new series that I hope you guys will enjoy as well as participate in. Oftentimes we get questions about how to deal with X, Y, or Z composition. What should have I done in this situation? And I never can give great answers because really I need to see the game that you're playing in order to give better advice. So if you would like to get some of that advice, email into youroverwatchplays@gmail.com, attach a gameplay, put in the body of the email a brief description of the issues you're having or the questions you want to ask, and in the subject line, I don't know, put like Coach Frito or something so we can see and decipher it in the email. And we'll try to review those as well as make videos of the best examples that we think can be utilized as a teaching tool for everybody. So rather than just responding to you individually, we can actually make content which hopefully can lift all boats in the knowledge base ocean of Overwatch. That's a goofy little analogy to start off with the video. But hey, here we go. We are this time going to be reviewing my gameplay since it was readily available. And I am confronted with a problem that I think oftentimes most of you are. And almost just on cue as I say the word problem, it seems the Hanzo pick has emerged. How do you deal with this? Well, really, if I was to give him the benefit of the doubt that he was a sick Hanzo or playing with Seagull, probably the greatest thing that I could do for him is just be a tank that can defend him. Either Roadhog crowd control, but ideally, really, since we don't have a tank, Reinhardt is the obvious answer here. But I end up not going with it for a few reasons. One, I'm not very good at Reinhardt. I try to say that into the chat. Reinhardt's my worst hero. I do want to try to learn him, but it just seems my timings are always off. I feel claustrophobic when I'm trying to shield and never really know when I'm supposed to drop it, when I should. It's not good. Charges always miss. I fly across the other side of the map. My Winston is great. My Reinhardt's terrible. I know this. And I try to describe that to them, and it doesn't matter. They want to pick Hanzo. Hanzo's sick. Fine. There's no way you're going to be able to work with that. But worse, I already knew, because I played with this team on the other side. If you're playing close attention, we're actually on the second side of this map. On the first side, it didn't seem that that particular player was interested in playing as a team. Very baity, very off on his own, not using team voice, not listening to calls. There didn't really feel like a point in playing a character that's going to require me to have synergy with somebody I don't know that's not talking, which for all I know, doesn't even know how to play the role he's picking. And that's a problem. And that was a key point in Eddie's video, the top 5 mistakes in competitive matchmaking, that a lot of times people just want to pick DPS because it's cool, it's sexy, it's flashy. But the problem is, you need to know when you do that, you're saying and signaling to the rest of the team that I am a very skillful player. I deserve to have the responsibility. Speaking of skillful players, that far out was terrible. We can get to that in another video. My far outs leave a lot to be desired, I understand them. But if you pick a DPS character right off the gate of the first selection process, it's like you're saying to everyone else, build around me, which is the case with the other DPS player that got picked, Soldier, that says no tanks. Is nobody going to pick a tank? Well, clearly you guys don't want to, and we're in a 3-stack. To be honest, we actually know how to play the game at a high level, we think, at least. Maybe we're lying to ourselves, who knows? Maybe it's our fault the entire time. But we try to play it well, but it's a problem when you expect people to tank or heal for you without understanding the rest of the game, because this is kind of an interesting almost psychology perspective of this as well. It seems players that want to pick DPS all the time, and then you ask them to tank, 9 times out of 10 they'll pick Roadhog, as if that somehow is a tanking component that's going to help synergize with the team, when in reality Roadhog's just a slower DPS. He's not really shielding or synergizing with the rest of the team. That's not his role, which is okay, but it's a big misunderstanding of the roles of Overwatch. Really, the main tank is always going to be Reinhardt, but if you're playing in solo queue meta, you might have to get away without having a healer. You might have to get away without having a tank. And how do you do that? You play characters that are self-sufficient. Instead of imposing team play onto players playing selfishly, you too, unfortunately, are going to have a selfish element to your playstyle so that you can at least do enough by yourself to have an impact on the game and to not die. How do I do that? As Pharah, I just used a terrain. I don't need a Reinhardt shield to necessarily tank me, because as long as I'm staying alive and don't get focused down, I know my aim is decent enough to at least inflict damage on the other team, and I can guarantee some value. Whereas if I was just Reinhardt standing in front of my random teammates who may or may not be hitting anything, I don't know if I can get that same value, right? That's the key to this equation. Oftentimes, I can tell you the correct responses when we're talking about team compositions. How do you deal with X, Y, or Z composition? They're doing this to me. What should we do? If you have an organized team, yes, I can tell you what that is, because I've seen the pros deal with the situation. We play the game a lot. We like to think we know what we're talking about. But if you have that element, that extra variable of players who may not understand team play in this game, or even understand the roles they're picking and seemingly should know, it's not going to work. There's no reason to try to force standard meta onto the solo queue meta, and that's what we've dubbed it, the solo queue meta, where it's in a completely different type of game of Overwatch, and sometimes it yields to no healers on a team when we're supposedly in the top 5 or so % of the entire player base, and no healers are getting picked, no tanks are getting picked. It's ludicrous. It doesn't make any sense. But ultimately, if you know your teammates aren't going to cooperate, then you have to figure out something. And the solution that we've figured out that is the most reliable way to win under these conditions is to synergize with our team's lack of synergy. That sounds like an oxymoron, but it's not, I guarantee you. Because if you pick characters that need synergy and your teammates don't know how to play that way, it's not going to work. Whereas if you pick heroes that are self-sufficient by yourself, can keep themselves alive, and can make individual plays, then you may actually be able to play as a team better, which is sad to say because it's Overwatch, it's a team game, you like to think it's all about teamwork, but in solo queue ELO Hell, it isn't. And I haven't had a chance to mention it yet, but the point about escaping ELO Hell is that the higher ranks you get up to, and I don't know, maybe it's the top 2% of players, I'm not exactly sure, but if you can get up to there, then it seems finally everybody is trying to coordinate together and the selfish play begins to stop. But speaking of selfish play, this is a good example where my hero selection was key in allowing me to play the solo queue meta. I saw that I had the Zen down to chip health, so I dive him to hopefully get a high value frag on their healer. That in turn causes Zen to pop his Transcendence, in which time I use Soldier's ability to sprint, high class technology there, but it is very good to be able to sprint away and use the map terrain, as I did with Pharah at the other point, to stay alive. Staying alive is so important in solo queue because as long as you keep yourself alive, you can still have value to the team. If I was another character who may arguably be more meta than Soldier, say McCree, who is the superior hit scan technically, I couldn't have made that play. Because McCree has far less mobility, but that blind spot of his kit is supposed to be picked up by teammates' tanking capabilities. So now let's take a moment to describe a few characters that are great for this solo queue meta. It is going to vary from player to player because obviously you're going to have the skill set to play these characters, but I think I can pick one from every class. The general theme is going to be self-healing and mobility, because if you have the ability to heal yourself, you don't have to rely on teammates necessarily to pick you up, and if you have mobility, you can get away from bad situations and don't necessarily have to play with your team all the time. This is why in solo queue I like Tracer, Soldier, Pharah, characters that can get in and out. Mei is also surprisingly good. Roadhog can work, although he doesn't have the mobility, but he has the healing so that he at least can keep himself alive and doesn't have to rely on that Ana on your team who's playing DPS instead of heals to heal him. Now, if you don't play any of these roles and you are a dedicated support, first of all, let me take this moment to thank you sincerely for being the core of what keeps Overwatch alive. If you play support, I'm sorry for you, because oftentimes you're probably getting dove by the enemy team, and it's probably very frustrating for you. In that instance, I would suggest that the best picks there are either Lucio, who has the most mobility to be able to keep himself alive, or Zen, who at least can potentially frag his way out of fighting a Genji who's diving him. Characters like Mercy and Ana, way too flimsy in the meta right now and not going to be great if your team isn't helping you. And a few last ones I'll tag on there is Genji and Reaper. If you play them really well, and if the enemy team isn't coordinated enough to focus you down, those can work too. Now remember, this isn't advice to play Overwatch in general. This isn't how I want the game to be played necessarily. It's just my recommendation for when you're in ELO Hell games. By all means, if you come up with guys that are communicating and want to run a standard 2-2-2, run it. Fill in that team. Try to coordinate with them. Converse with them and see if they're actually sick Pharah Hanzo DPS player. In those situations, I don't mind playing Mercy. I'm not trying to say the way to get out of solo queue is to frag your way through. But at the same time, in reality, you can't always get what you want. You get what you need. And sometimes you need to bait. You need to bait and stay alive and not expect for the general top-level teamwork tactics to work. I hope you found this video helpful. There's a lot more I can say about this topic, but if I kept talking, this video would be 20 minutes long, so I'm sure I'll come back to this concept of the hilariously lopsided solo queue composition meta. But hopefully, at least for now, some of you can escape ELO Hell. If you want to send in gameplays, be sure to email them in to youroverwatchplays@gmail.com. If you haven't subscribed already to the channel, get on that Deckard Cain stuff and stay a while and listen. Hit the subscribe button. We upload daily, sometimes twice a day. We stream on Twitch each and every day as our videos on YouTube go live. Come on in, say hi, watch us use some of these tactics to try to rank up ourselves. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like on it. It does help us out a lot, and we appreciate it. I've been Frito for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.